At 2:34 p.m., the interruption happens exactly 41 seconds after Jasmine Crockett begins speaking, 41 seconds wherein she explains to the Senate Committee on Economic Mobility how proposed worker protections would assist low-income individuals by citing specific data concerning wage stagnation in manufacturing regions, her delivery structured and evidence-based and directly challenging the narrative that working-class struggles are a cultural phenomenon rather than a systemic flaw. Abruptly, a voice cuts across the room, conveying that specific tone of condescending confidence common among individuals who have never questioned their right to interrupt, shouting, "Madame Chair, point of order." The person speaking is Vice President J.D. Vance, presiding over the Senate according to his constitutional obligation, holding the position that provides theoretical oversight of chamber rules but actual authority over almost nothing beyond the occasional casting of a tie-breaking vote. This is primarily a ceremonial function that most vice presidents avoid due to its perceived lack of engagement and significance. However, Vance attends this meeting specifically, aware that Jasmine Crockett is scheduled to address the committee, seeking an opportunity to publicly diminish her position since she aggressively challenged Mike Johnson's ethics 3 months earlier. The hearing room becomes quiet in that distinct way, suggesting everyone understands something unusual is taking place. C-SPAN's digital stream counts approximately 52,000 viewers who tuned in expecting technical legislative testimony regarding overtime rules and minimum wage adjustments, oblivious that they are about to witness political history. Committee Chairman Sherrod Brown, the Ohio Democrat heading this panel for 6 years who possesses no warmth for his state's former junior senator now serving as vice president, looks up with obvious irritation. The vice president has recognized authority to speak, though I feel compelled to state this is highly irregular during a witness's testimony. Barbai. Vance leans forward from the chair of the presiding officer, wearing the outfit he has cultivated carefully over the past 8 years. It is a slightly rumpled, expensive suit meant to seem modest, paired with a respectable but not overly luxurious tie, creating that calculated appearance of being sufficiently successful to be taken seriously, but not so affluent as to seem elitist, despite his wealth exceeding $7 million accrued as a Silicon Valley venture capitalist managing investments for billionaires. Madam Chair, with complete respect for Congresswoman Crockett, and his emphasis on Congresswoman conveys that specific condescension powerful men sometimes employ when they intend to imply women are overreaching their station. I believe we need to pause to address something vital at this moment. He shifts his position, leans back slightly, and adopts that folksy Ohio accent he emphasizes whenever he is performing for the cameras. It is the inflection that strengthens depending on his audience. This is also the dialect that vanishes entirely when he is speaking to technology executives in San Francisco or requesting financial contributions from Manhattan billionaires. Some members of Congress, particularly those representing urban areas like Dallas and Los Angeles and various coastal centers, simply do not understand the values, concerns, and real daily lives of working-class Americans. They come forward with plans developed by think tanks and progressive advocates, approaches that look attractive in presentations but fail to reflect how real people in actual communities live their lives. Several Republican senators nod their heads in approval. This is the messaging they favor. This is the role J.D. Vance created with Hillbilly Elegy and has been performing continuously. He portrays the authentic voice of forgotten America, the Yale law graduate who somehow maintains the deepest understanding of the struggles of those in Appalachia, the venture capitalist asserting he represents individuals who have never encountered venture capital in their lives. Vance continues, his voice assuming that practiced tone of working-class solidarity. Having grown up in Middletown, Ohio, having experienced the challenges I detailed in Hillbilly Elegy, and having worked alongside the overlooked men and women of the Rust Belt before coming to D.C., I can say with certainty that the policies proposed here today show a fundamental disconnect from the people they claim to help. He looks directly at Jasmine Crockett now, his expression showing total superior dismissal. Perhaps the distinguished gentlewoman from Dallas should spend less time lecturing about working Americans and more time listening to them. Perhaps she could consider that her urban perspective, regardless of intentions, does not apply to the towns I come from, the towns I represent, The towns I understand in ways coastal legislators simply cannot. The Republican members in the hearing room exhibit varying levels of satisfaction. There is genuine agreement from some representatives who fully accept Vance's presentation, alongside cynical acknowledgement from others that he is providing useful political messaging, even if they understand it lacks substance. All of them believe this will resonate effectively on Fox News and in fundraising appeals about challenging progressive Democrats who misunderstand real America. Fox News producers in the control room are already editing clips with graphics such as VP Vance champions working Americans and Crockett's coastal elite view challenged. Democratic senators seem uncomfortable. Some are uneasy because they are uncertain how to refute the insincere populism without appearing elitist, while others know Crockett needs no help but are concerned about a current vice president attacking a House representative during a hearing. Chairman Brown begins to object, saying, "Vice President, Congresswoman Crockett was requested to provide data, and your interruption." Yet Jasmine Crockett, whose testimony was stopped 41 seconds in by a condescending lecture from a venture capitalist posing as a working-class advocate, who was told she doesn't comprehend working Americans by an individual funded by billionaires, and who was dismissed as a coastal elitist by someone who made millions in Silicon Valley, does something that makes several people in the room immediately recognize what is coming. She smiles. It is that specific prosecutor's expression that is becoming well known. It is the look indicating that you have made a catastrophic strategic error and are too arrogant to realize it yet. It is that particular facial expression conveying gratitude for providing the opportunity to methodically deconstruct your argument. She reaches beside her witness table where 4 binders are placed, red, blue, green, and gold, containing files meticulously organized during 4 weeks of investigation by her expanded team, which now includes 2 former Congressional Research Service analysts, a Yale law student whose thesis focused on Vance, and 3 journalists who have been investigating his financial connections for years and were eager to submit their evidence. She opens all 4 binders simultaneously, fanning them out so the cameras capture their size, filled with dividers, neon highlights, and sticky flags. This is evidence that powerful men assumed would remain scattered across financial statements, legislative records, interviews, and the very memoir he wrote, whose actual content he assumes people have forgotten. "Thank you, Mr. Vice President," she says, and her vocal tone has completely changed from the legislative testimony pitch to that sharp prosecutorial edge indicating someone is about to undergo cross-examination with undeniable documentation. I appreciate that informative perspective on who understands working-class Americans and who does not. That offered extremely helpful context for what is next. The room becomes silent in that tense manner, suggesting power dynamics have just shifted. But most people have not yet mentally processed it. The C-SPAN digital stream viewership jumps from 52,000 to 89,000 in the 40 seconds since Vance started speaking, as users sharing clips on social platforms realize that a major event is unfolding. Vance maintains that satisfied smirk, believing he just delivered a perfect populist moment that will dominate the news cycle. He has absolutely no idea he just entered a thoroughly documented 4-binder challenge to his entire, carefully constructed public image. "Chairman Brown," Crockett continues, her eyes fixed on Vance in the presiding seat, "I appreciate the Vice President's passion concerning the understanding of working Americans, given that he interrupted my comments specifically to question if I comprehend their daily lives, their values, and their concerns. And considering he cited his own background, his own book, and his own claimed credibility as the true representative of working-class struggle, I believe it would be helpful for this committee and the American public to examine that credibility closely." She pauses, letting the moment sink in. "I want to request Vice President Vance to descend from the rostrum and take the witness seat because he has raised questions about who truly understands and speaks for working Americans. Let us review the records, his history, his background, his policies, his votes, and determine who actually benefits working people and who merely performs authenticity while supporting entirely different interests." The silence that follows is intense. Chairman Brown seems stunned because one does not call the vice president to face questioning like an ordinary adversary. This is simply not how protocol operates. This is not how power dynamics work. Even if technically the vice president possesses no actual power in Senate operations outside of presiding. Republican senators seemed genuinely shocked. Several turned toward each other, showing expressions conveying, "Is she serious?" You simply do not challenge the vice president publicly. You do not ask him to defend his credibility. You do not treat him as if he is accountable to documentation rather than protected by his office. Democratic senators suddenly sit up straighter. Many are hiding smiles because they recognize what Crockett just accomplished. She turned Vance's patronizing attack into an opportunity to put him under scrutiny, doing so in a way that makes him seem weak if he refuses to back up his own claims. J.D. Vance's face shows a rapid sequence of expressions: surprise that she is not becoming apologetic or defensive, irritation that she is not following the expected script where he lectures and she submits, and calculation as he assesses if this is a trap. Then back to that practice confidence, because he genuinely believes in his own presentation and truly thinks his credentials from Hillbilly Elegy are beyond question. He simply cannot imagine that anyone would have exhaustive records concerning the gap between his rhetoric and his real life. "Congresswoman," he says with a slight chuckle meant to seem relaxed and confident but coming across as condescending and defensive, "I did not come here to testify. I came to manage Senate functions and offer a perspective when representatives seem disconnected from the citizens they are supposed to assist. I am the Vice President of the United States." "I understand your position, Mr. Vice President," Crockett responds smoothly, her voice calm but containing a sharp edge. "However, you just interrupted a congressional meeting to personally question my understanding of working Americans. You cited your background, your book, and your claimed authentic connection with struggling communities. You positioned yourself as the one who truly understands while dismissing me as an out-of-touch coastal elitist. So I am simply asking, are you ready to have that credibility examined? Are you ready to defend your claimed understanding of working people against documentation of your actual history? Or do you only feel comfortable lecturing others without facing scrutiny yourself?" The trap closes audibly. If Vance refuses, he looks exactly as he is, an insincere populist who can hand out criticism but cannot defend his own carefully constructed image when faced with evidence. If Vance agrees, he is about to face questioning from someone who clearly holds four binders of thorough evidence and the prosecutorial skill to use them effectively. Either way, he loses. But J.D. Vance is someone who has spent 8 years creating a public persona as the authentic voice of working-class America, who wrote a best-selling book presenting himself as uniquely capable of understanding Appalachian struggles, and who has built his entire political career on the claim that he represents overlooked areas better than anyone else in D.C. He is so confident in his performance that he genuinely cannot imagine what Jasmine Crockett could possibly have that would threaten it. He believes his Yale degree is unimportant because he mentioned his grandparents' poverty. He believes his venture capital millions are irrelevant to his public image because he wrote about public assistance and dependency. He thinks his billionaire financial support is not relevant because he wears inexpensive-looking suits and speaks with an Ohio accent. He believes the performance is the reality. He is about to learn otherwise. "Fine," Vance states, rising from the presiding chair with that faint smirk suggesting he believes this will be easy, thinking he will explain his background, his commitment, and his authentic connection to working people, perhaps cite some quotes from Hillbilly Elegy, and leave appearing even more credible as the voice of forgotten America. If the Congresswoman wants to waste committee time questioning my qualifications to discuss working Americans, I am happy to clear up the record. My story speaks for itself. Those final 5 words will be replayed repeatedly in the coming weeks, always with intense irony. Vance steps down from the presiding platform to the witness table. That carefully calculated working-class outfit is on full display. The suit is respectable, but not overly so. The tie suggests success without extravagance. The entire look is intended to communicate, "I succeeded, but I did not forget where I came from." Even though his origins were 20 years ago and his subsequent path led through Yale Law School, Silicon Valley investment firms, and political campaigns funded by billionaires. Chairman Brown, still appearing stunned, but recognizing an opportunity to allow Vance to expose himself, manages to say, "Vice President Vance, you are not required to take an oath since you are here voluntarily." "I will take the oath," Vance interrupts, because he is performing for the cameras now, appealing to the base that loves seeing their champion volunteer to be questioned under oath because he is so authentic. He has nothing to fear, so confident in his working-class credentials that documentation cannot affect him. "I want the American people to know I am here truthfully, openly, with nothing to hide concerning my background or my commitment to the people I represent." Chairman Brown administers the oath with a slightly shaking hand. Vance raises his right hand and promises to tell the truth with that practiced seriousness, then sits in the witness chair and looks directly at Jasmine Crockett with an expression saying, "Give it your best effort." What he does not perceive yet is that Crockett's expression has become completely neutral, completely professional, completely concentrated. It is the face of a prosecutor who is about to methodically deconstruct a witness who just put himself on the stand, believing his charm and performance would protect him. What he does not know yet is that those 4 binders contain his own statements from different times, showing complete contradictions. His own voting record contradicts the people he claims to represent. His own financial records prove he serves billionaire interests. His own book blames working people for their poverty. All of this is organized not to attack him randomly, but to use his own claimed authenticity as the measure for his actual conduct. What he does not understand yet is that he spent 8 years creating a persona as the authentic working-class voice in American politics, while leaving a thorough documented history of being exactly the opposite. And Jasmine Crockett spent 4 weeks documenting every contradiction. The C-SPAN digital stream viewership reaches 117,000 and is increasing rapidly as users sharing clips employ phrases like, "VP just walked into a trap." This is going to be unforgettable, and Crockett is preparing to interrogate the vice president. Cable news networks are urgently switching to live coverage. Producers realize this is mandatory viewing. Democratic offices around Capitol Hill are rushing to watch, uncertain if they should cheer or panic that a House representative is about to question the current vice president. Republican offices are in complete chaos. Some believe Vance will dominate her. Others know from the Mike Johnson incident that when Jasmine Crockett has binders, someone is about to be undone by their own records. And in the Senate hearing room, Jasmine Crockett lifts the first document from the blue binder, holding it so the cameras can confirm it is a page from a published book. Real text with actual words that real people can verify. "Thank you for taking the oath, Mr. Vice President," she says, her voice perfectly controlled, perfectly professional. "Since you interrupted my comments to imply I do not understand working Americans and you do, let us examine the foundation of that claimed understanding. Let us look at what you have actually said about working-class people, what you have actually done for them, and whom you actually serve." She places the page on the table between them. "This is page 140 from Hillbilly Elegy, your 2016 memoir that you cited today as proof of your authentic connection to working-class struggles. I am going to read your own words directly from your own book." Crockett looks up, making eye contact with Vance, then reads in a clear, measured tone, "We spend our way into poverty. We buy giant TVs and iPads. Our homes are cluttered with toys and games. We choose not to work when we should be looking for jobs." End quote. Those are your words, Mr. Vice President. "We choose not to work." You literally wrote that poor people in Appalachia choose unemployment, that their poverty is a choice. She lifts another marked page. Page 243. There is a lack of agency here, a feeling that you have little control over your life, and a willingness to blame everyone but yourself. You wrote that working-class people lack personal agency and blame others for their troubles instead of accepting responsibility. Another page, page 89. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful are the expectations they had for their own lives, suggesting that poor people fail because they do not expect enough from themselves, not because of structural issues like deindustrialization, corporate offshoring, trade pacts, or economic frameworks. Crockett sets down all 3 pages in a row, the actual text visible to the cameras. Mr. Vice President, your book, the one you cited today as proof of your authentic understanding of working Americans, explicitly blames poor people for their own poverty. You wrote that they opt out of work, that they lack personal accountability, that their struggles are fundamentally cultural and personal rather than economic and systemic. Is that an accurate reading of your book? The question lands with significant force. Vance adjusts in his seat, his confident smirk fading slightly. Hillbilly Elegy was a personal memoir examining complex cultural factors. Yes or no, Mr. Vice President? Crockett interrupts cleanly, seizing control the way prosecutors do. Did you write those words I just read? Words that blame poor people for choosing unemployment and lacking personal accountability? There is a pause, 2 seconds that feel like 20. I wrote about cultural factors that I observed. Yes, Crockett says, not as a question but as a declaration. You wrote them. You blamed poor people for their poverty. You told wealthy coastal elites, because that is who purchased your book, not struggling folks in Appalachia, that working-class hardships are their own fault. You generated $4 million selling that narrative, $4 million telling rich people that poor people are responsible for their own poverty. She lets that figure hang in the air. So, when you interrupted my testimony today to imply I do not understand working Americans, I have to ask, does someone who blamed them for their poverty in a best-selling book really understand them? Or did you just profit from their suffering while telling a story that comfortable elites wanted to hear? Vance attempts to reply, but Crockett does not grant him the space, moving immediately into her next line of questioning, each segment building on the previous one to create a comprehensive pattern of inconsistent authenticity. Let's talk about who you actually are, Mr. Vice President, versus the persona you perform, she continues, pulling documents from the green binder. Now, because you positioned yourself today as someone who understands working-class hardships through lived experience, let us examine that lived experience. She holds up what appears to be an academic record. You graduated from Yale Law School in 2013. Yale Law, one of the 3 most elite educational institutions in America, where current tuition is $85,000 per year. You did not just attend, you graduated, meaning you spent 3 years networking with the children of billionaires, studying under professors who charge $10,000 per speech, accessing opportunities available to perhaps 300 people per year in a nation of 330 million. Crockett sets down the transcript. I am not saying you did not earn that chance. I am establishing who you became at age 25, an Ivy League graduate with elite credentials and elite connections. That is your actual lived experience from 2013 onward, not working-class struggle, but elite access. She lifts another document, this one looking like a corporate biography. After Yale, you went to work at Sidley Austin, a corporate law firm where the starting salary was, and I checked this, $190,000 per year. You represented corporations. You worked in one of those gleaming office towers where lunch costs $40 and clients are Fortune 500 companies. That was 2013 to 2014, still your lived experience, still elite. Another document. Then in 2016, you became a principal at Mithril Capital, which is Peter Thiel's venture capital firm. You invested money for billionaires. You made decisions about which tech startups would get millions in funding. You attended conferences in San Francisco and Aspen where the least wealthy person in the room was worth 8 figures. Your salary and compensation package was never disclosed, but typical venture capital principal compensation is $700,000 to $2 million per year. That was 2016 to 2017, 2 years making more money annually than most of your childhood neighbors made in a decade. Crockett is building a systematic timeline, each document adding to the picture. In 2019, you founded Naria Capital, your own venture capital firm. According to SEC filings, Naria raised $93 million from investors. You managed those investments. You took a percentage of returns. By 2021, when you ran for Senate, your personal net worth was estimated at $7 million. 7 million, that is not working class, Mr. Vice President. That is the investment class. That is people whose money works for them rather than working for money. She spreads out the documents in chronological order, creating a visual timeline. So let us be clear about your actual lived experience for the past 12 years. Yale law graduate, corporate attorney, venture capital firm founder, multimillionaire. Those are facts. That is who you have been since age 28. You have not worked a working-class job in over a decade. You have not worried about rent or groceries or medical bills or any of the daily struggles that define working-class life. Your lived experience is elite schools, elite firms, elite wealth. Crockett leans forward, her voice sharp now. Yet you interrupted my testimony today to suggest that I, a woman who worked her way through law school, who practiced as a public defender and civil rights attorney, who represents a diverse working-class district in Dallas, do not understand working Americans, while you, a venture capitalist with a $7 million net worth funded by billionaires, do. Can you explain that? What about making millions in Silicon Valley gives you an authentic understanding of working-class hardships? Vance's face is reddening, his carefully constructed working-class image being systematically dismantled by his own biography. Your childhood experiences were 20 years ago, Crockett interrupts. Your grandmother's struggles were a generation ago. Your childhood poverty ended when you joined the Marines, got military benefits, went to Ohio State on the GI Bill, then Yale on scholarship. By age 25, you were elite, and you have been elite ever since. You have spent longer as a millionaire venture capitalist than you spent in poverty. Your current identity is elite, your current life is elite, your current interests are elite. The working-class background is a costume you wear for political purposes, not a reality you live. She picks up one more document, this one looking like a legal filing. And speaking of costumes, let's talk about your name. You were born James Donald Bowman, correct? Vance looks uncomfortable. My mother remarried. You took your stepfather's name, Hamill, for some time, then you legally changed your name to Vance, your grandparents' name, specifically when you were preparing to publish Hillbilly Elegy and launch your public career. You chose J.D. Vance because it sounded more Appalachian, more authentically working class, better for the brand you were building. Even your name is a marketing decision, Mr. Vice President. James Bowman, Yale law graduate and venture capitalist, does not sell books. J.D. Vance, the authentic voice of Appalachia, does. You manufactured your identity, literally down to what you are called. The hearing room is completely silent except for the clicking of cameras and the scratching of reporters' pens frantically taking notes. C-SPAN viewership is at 167,000, and the hashtag #HillbillyFraud is trending number 2 globally. And J.D. Vance, sitting at the witness table, is watching his carefully constructed authentic working-class persona get demolished by simple biographical facts he cannot deny because they are his own life story, his own choices, his own transformation from a poor kid to a multi-millionaire elite, documented and undeniable and completely at odds with the image he sells. Crockett does not pause, does not let him recover, because she is moving into what might be the most devastating section. The documentation of Vance's complete reversal on literally every position he has taken, proving his lack of any authentic principles. Now let's discuss consistency, she says, pulling documents from the red binder. Because authentic people, people with genuine principles and real convictions, tend to be consistent over time. Their core values do not radically reverse based on political convenience. So let us examine your consistency, Mr. Vice President. She arranges what appears to be a timeline with quotes and columns. Let's start with your views on Donald Trump. Since you are currently serving as his vice president, I am going to read your own words from 2016 during Trump's first campaign. These are documented in text messages, interviews, and public statements. Crockett reads from printed screenshots. Text message to Josh McLaurin, August 2016. I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical a-hole or that he's America's Hitler. That is a direct quote, Mr. Vice President. You compared Donald Trump to Hitler. She picks up another document. Interview with Charlie Rose, October 2016. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. Direct quote. You identified as never Trump. Another document, op-ed in The Atlantic, October 2016. Trump is cultural heroin. He makes people feel good for the moment, but he's very bad for them long term. You called him heroin. She is building a systematic pattern now. Quote after private Facebook message, later leaked, July 2016. Trump is just a bad man, a morally reprehensible human being. You called him morally reprehensible. One more interview on NPR, July 2016. Trump makes people I care about afraid. Immigrants, Muslims, minorities. He makes them feel like they are not part of America. You said he made vulnerable people afraid. Crockett sets down all 5 documents, the 2016 quotes visible in a column. Those are your words from 2016, Mr. Vice President. Hitler, never Trump, cultural heroin, morally reprehensible, making people afraid. Not taken out of context, not misquoted, your actual documented positions 8 years ago. She picks up documents from a different section. Now let us look at your statements from 2021 to 2024, when you decided to run for Senate and needed Trump's endorsement. New quotes, entirely different tone. An interview with Fox News, July 2021. I was wrong about Trump. He was the best president of my lifetime. Campaign rally, May 2022. President Trump's policies helped working Americans more than any president in 50 years. Interview with Breitbart, November 2022. Trump understood the working class better than anyone. VP acceptance speech, July 2024. Donald Trump is the greatest leader this nation has seen since Abraham Lincoln. Crockett looks up from the documents directly at Vance. From Hitler to Lincoln, from cultural heroin to the greatest leader since Lincoln. From morally reprehensible to the best president of your lifetime. That is not growth, Mr. Vice President. That is not evolution or learning or having your mind changed by evidence. That is a complete, total 180-degree reversal of every stated conviction within 18 months of deciding you wanted political power. The only thing that changed was not Trump. He is the same person. What changed was your ambition. She lets that hang in the air for 5 seconds. Can you name a single principle you actually hold consistently, one value you would not reverse if it became politically convenient? Vance tries to respond. My views evolved as I saw Trump's policies in action. Evolved? Crockett's voice cuts like a blade. You called him Hitler, then called him Lincoln. That is not evolution, that is opportunistic transformation. You did not develop new understanding. You recognized he had power and you wanted access to it, so you reversed every principle you claimed to hold. That is not authentic. That is calculated misrepresentation. But she is not finished with the reversals. Let's look at policy positions since you like to claim you consistently fight for working Americans. She pulls out a new set of documents showing voting records and past statements side by side. Healthcare. In 2016, you wrote in an op-ed, Medicaid expansion is crucial for working-class communities with limited access to care. Then, as senator in 2023, you voted against Medicaid expansion for Ohio. You reversed your position. Why? Because opposing it became Republican orthodoxy and you serve your party, not your principles. Another comparison, environment. In 2016, you gave an interview saying, climate change is real and affects Appalachian communities through flooding and extreme weather. We need reasonable regulations. Then, as senator, you voted against every environmental protection measure, against EPA regulations that would protect water quality in coal country, against climate initiatives. Complete reversal. Why? Because environmental protection threatens your donors in extractive industries. She is gaining momentum now, each flip-flop adding to the pattern. Labor rights. In a 2016 interview, unions built the middle class and we should make it easier for workers to organize. As senator, you voted against the PRO Act that would protect union organizing, voted against card check, voted against every single piece of pro-labor legislation. Total reversal. Opioid crisis. In Hillbilly Elegy, you wrote extensively about how addiction destroyed your community, how it was a systemic crisis requiring massive intervention. As senator, you voted against expanded funding for treatment programs, voted against regulations on pharmaceutical companies that pushed opioids. When given the chance to actually address the crisis you profited from writing about, you voted no because it would affect your pharmaceutical industry donors. Crockett spreads out all the comparison documents in two columns, what Vance said before politics versus what Vance did in politics. The pattern is undeniable, Mr. Vice President, on literally every issue: Trump, healthcare, environment, labor, addiction treatment, immigration, trade, education. You said one thing before you ran for office, then did the complete opposite once you got power. You do not have principles, you have political calculations. You do not have authentic beliefs, you have focus-grouped positions. You are not consistent, you are opportunistic. She leans forward, her voice hard now. And that is the difference between authentic and manufactured. Authentic people have core values they hold even when it is politically inconvenient. Manufactured people change every position based on what advances their career. You are manufactured, Mr. Vice President. From your name, to your accent, to your working-class costume, to your policy positions, every bit of your identity is calculated performance. And the receipts prove it. But Crockett is not finished dismantling Vance's populist image, because now she is moving into perhaps the most devastating section, showing exactly who really controls his political career and whom he actually serves. Let's talk about who funded your political career, she says, pulling documents from the gold binder, the one she saved for last because it contains the financial receipts that prove everything. Because you interrupted my testimony to lecture about understanding working Americans and fighting for forgotten communities, so let us examine who actually paid for your political power and what you did for them in return. She holds up what appear to be FEC disclosure forms. Your 2022 Senate campaign total fundraising was approximately $32 million, expensive for an Ohio race. Let us look at where that money came from. Crockett pulls out a breakdown chart. Peter Thiel, your former employer at Mithril Capital, $15 million through his Super PAC. Protect O's Ohio Values. Is identities. From one billionaire, the single largest donation to any Senate campaign in 2022. You are not running a campaign, Mr. Vice President. You are the beneficiary of a billionaire's investment in buying a Senate seat. She sets that down and picks up more donation records. But it was not just Thiel. Your top 20 donors are venture capitalists, hedge fund managers, tech executives, and private equity partners. David Sachs, your colleague from the tech world, $650,000. Mark Andreessen, venture capitalist, $400,000. Executives from Google, Facebook, Amazon, all donating maximum amounts. Your campaign was not funded by working-class Ohioans. It was funded by Silicon Valley billionaires whom you used to be colleagues with and still are your bosses. Crockett spreads out donor records showing the pattern. And here is what is fascinating about this. You ran as a populist, you campaigned against coastal elites, you talked about fighting for the forgotten working class, and you were funded almost entirely by coastal elites, by the exact people you claimed to oppose because they knew something important. Your populism was performance, your real loyalty was to them, and they have been proven right. She picks up voting records now cross-referenced with donor interests. Let us look at what you did for your billionaire backers once you got to the Senate. Tax policy, you voted for tax cuts that overwhelmingly benefited the wealthy. The top 1% got an average tax break of $51,000. Working-class Ohioans got maybe $800. Your billionaire donors saved millions. Your constituents got crumbs. Whom did you serve? Tech regulation, when legislation came up to regulate big tech companies, To address monopolistic practices, data privacy violations, or algorithmic manipulation, you voted no every time. You protected Google, Facebook, Amazon, your donors, not your constituents who get exploited by these platforms. Whom did you serve? Corporate accountability. When legislation proposed stronger enforcement against corporate fraud, against companies that mislead investors or exploit workers, you voted no. Protecting corporate interests. Your donors' interests, not working people's interests. Financial regulation. Voted against regulations on private equity firms, on hedge funds, on venture capital disclosure requirements. Protecting exactly the industries you worked in that fund your campaigns, that made you rich. Whom did you serve? Crockett is systematic now, each vote proving the pattern. Labor rights. Voted against minimum wage increase, against paid family leave, against stronger overtime protections, against making it easier to form unions. Every vote against workers, every vote that benefits the corporations and wealthy individuals who fund you. Healthcare. Voted against Medicaid expansion that would cover 600,000 Ohioans, voted against drug price negotiations that would lower costs for working families, voted against protecting pre-existing condition coverage. Every vote that benefits pharmaceutical and insurance companies, your donors, at the expense of working people's health. She holds up a comparison chart. Here is the pattern, Mr. Vice President. Your top 10 campaign donors are industries. For each industry, I tracked your votes on legislation affecting that industry. Tech companies, you voted their interests 93% of the time, pharmaceutical 91%, finance 96%, energy 89%, corporate interests overall 94% average. You know what percentage of the time you voted for legislation that would directly help working-class Ohioans? Higher wages, better benefits, stronger safety nets, affordable health care, worker protections, 23%. 23% for your constituents, 94% for your donors. Crockett sets down the chart so cameras can see the stark comparison. You do not represent working Americans, Mr. Vice President. You represent the billionaires who bought you a Senate seat and now own your votes. You are not a populist. You are a puppet. You are not fighting for the forgotten. You are serving the people who can write seven-figure checks. Every vote proves it. Every policy position confirms it. You sold out the people you claim to represent. And the receipts show exactly what they got in return for their investment. She picks up one more document, this one showing Vance's personal financial disclosure. And let's talk about your personal investments. Since you filed financial disclosures as senator, you own stakes in companies that offshore American jobs. You personally profit when manufacturing moves from Ohio to Mexico. You have investments in companies that union busted their workers. You benefit financially from exactly the economic trends that devastate working-class communities. So, when you lecture me about understanding working Americans, I have to ask, how does personally profiting from offshoring their jobs demonstrate understanding? How does voting against their health care while voting for tax cuts for your donors show authentic representation? How does taking $15 million from Peter Thiel, then voting his interests over theirs, make you their voice? The hearing room is silent except for the sound of Vance's entire populist image crumbling under the weight of documented financial relationships. He cannot deny them. C-SPAN viewership is at 231,000. Every cable news network is carrying this live now. On Twitter, #BillionairesPuppet and #HillbillyFraud are both trending in the top 3 globally. Republican senators look down, unable to defend the undeniable pattern of donor service. Democratic senators are openly riveted by the systematic dismantling. And J.D. Vance, sitting at the witness table, finally understands that he just got his entire political identity exposed as an insincere purchase by someone with 4 binders of receipts, proving who really controls his career. But Crockett is not finished, because she is saving the most personal and most devastating attack for last. Exposing Hillbilly Elegy itself as a profit-seeking venture that capitalized on Appalachian poverty while blaming victims for their own suffering. Let us return to Hillbilly Elegy, she says, her voice taking on a different quality now, something closer to genuine anger than prosecutorial detachment. Because that book is the foundation of your entire political identity. You invoked it today, you reference it constantly. It's your credential for claiming to understand and represent working-class struggles. So let us examine what that book actually says and who it actually served. She holds up a hardcover copy of Hillbilly Elegy, one with multiple page markers visible. I read this book very carefully, Mr. Vice President, multiple times with a highlighter, making notes because you have made millions from it and built a political career on it. So let us look at what you actually wrote. Crockett opens to a marked page and reads, Page 140, we spend our way into poverty. We buy giant TVs and iPads. Our homes are cluttered with toys and games. We choose not to work when we should be looking for jobs. Your thesis, poor people make bad financial decisions and choose unemployment. Another page, page 243, there is a lack of agency here, a feeling that you have little control over your life and a willingness to blame everyone but yourself. We spend our time fighting the drug war and helping the homeless while failing to recognize that the real problem is us. Your thesis, poor people lack personal responsibility and blame others instead of themselves. Another marked section, page 89, what separates the successful from the unsuccessful are the expectations they had for their own lives. People who believe they have no control will never truly control themselves. Your thesis, poor people are unsuccessful because they do not expect enough from themselves. Crockett sets down the book and picks up reviews and articles about it. Now, let us talk about who this book was written for and who it served. You published Hillbilly Elegy in June 2016, right as Trump was winning the Republican nomination. The media was scrambling to understand why white working-class voters were supporting him. And your book provided an answer that coastal elites desperately wanted to hear. She reads from reviews. New York Times, a compassionate analysis of the poor who back Trump. Washington Post, essential reading for understanding Trump's America. NPR explains the white working class in ways that help us understand the current political moment. Notice the pattern. This book was marketed to and consumed by educated coastal elites who wanted to understand why working-class people were struggling and supporting Trump. And your answer, the answer that made you millions, was that their poverty is cultural and personal, that they lack responsibility, that they make bad choices, that they blame others instead of looking in the mirror. Crockett's voice hardens. That is a very convenient narrative for wealthy people. It tells them that poverty is not their problem to solve. It is not caused by deindustrialization or trade policies, or corporate offshoring or wage stagnation or the systematic destruction of unions and worker power. No, it is caused by poor people making bad choices. They just need to work harder and make better decisions. Your book gave wealthy people permission to feel morally superior while doing nothing to help. She picks up sales figures. Hillbilly Elegy sold over 3 million copies. It made you approximately $4 million in royalties. You became a celebrity, a media figure. You got a Netflix movie deal. You became a highly paid speaker commanding $50,000 per appearance. You built an entire media brand on the story of Appalachian poverty. But here is what you did not do. You did not use that money or platform or celebrity to actually help Appalachian communities. You did not start programs to address addiction. You did not fund job training or education. You did not fight against the corporate policies destroying manufacturing jobs. You profited from their suffering, then did nothing to alleviate it. That is not understanding, that is exploitation. Crockett pulls out statements from Appalachian community organizations. Let me read you some responses from the communities you claim to represent. Appalachian Voices, a regional advocacy organization. J.D. Vance does not speak for our community. Hillbilly Elegy perpetuates harmful stereotypes that blame poor people for systemic economic devastation. Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. Vance profited from our stories while advocating for policies that harm us. His book is Poverty Tourism for Elite Consumption. Ohio Valley Resource Center. Vance's narrative ignores the corporate greed and policy decisions that destroyed our economy, while suggesting our struggles are our own fault. He exploited our pain for personal gain. Appalachian Studies Association, the academic organization focused on the region. Hillbilly Elegy offers simplistic cultural explanations for complex economic problems while ignoring systemic causes of poverty. It has done more harm than good for understanding Appalachian realities. She sets down the statements. The communities you claim to represent reject you, Mr. Vice President. They see Hillbilly Elegy for what it is, a profit-seeking venture, a way to capitalize on poverty while blaming victims for their own suffering. A story designed to make wealthy people feel good about doing nothing while you built celebrity and wealth on the backs of struggling communities. Crockett picks up his Senate voting record one more time. And then, this is the most insulting part, you use that celebrity to launch a political career where you voted against helping those communities at every opportunity. You wrote a book about the opioid crisis, made millions, then voted against addiction treatment funding. You wrote about struggling families, became a senator, then voted against Medicaid expansion. You wrote about economic devastation, got political power, then voted for tax cuts for billionaires instead of investments in working communities. Her voice rises with genuine anger. You capitalized on their suffering, blamed them for their struggles, built a career on their pain, then abandoned them when you had the power to actually help. That is not authentic representation, that is cynical exploitation. You are not the voice of working-class America, you are the person who figured out how to profit from their struggles while doing nothing, worse than nothing, actively harming them in return. Crockett takes a breath, gathering the systematic dismantling into a comprehensive conclusion. Let us step back and look at the complete pattern, she says, her voice shifting back to that prosecutorial closing argument tone. Because this is not about individual inconsistencies, or policy disagreements, or even political opportunism. This is about identity, about authenticity, about who someone really is versus who they pretend to be. She arranges documents from all four binders in organized groups. The identity you sell, working class, Appalachian, authentic voice, fighter for forgotten Americans, populist taking on coastal elites, someone who truly understands struggling communities because you came from them. The reality you live, Yale law graduate who has been elite for 12 years, venture capitalist with $7 million net worth, billionaire-funded politician who votes his donors' interests 94% of the time, Silicon Valley insider who made millions managing money for tech executives, someone who has not experienced working-class struggles since 2013. She moves to the next grouping. The consistency you claim, principled advocate for working people, someone whose values are rooted in Appalachian community and Christian commitment, a leader who fights for what's right regardless of political pressure. The reality you demonstrate, complete reversal on every position when politically convenient, called Trump Hitler, then called him Lincoln when you needed his endorsement, supported healthcare expansion, then opposed it when Republicans demanded opposition, claimed to support unions, then voted against them when donors wanted it, no principle too sacred to abandon for ambition. Next grouping. The independence you project, populist outsider taking on the establishment, fighter against coastal elites and corporate power, someone who cannot be bought because he represents real people. The reality you embody, essentially purchased by Peter Thiel for $15 million, funded almost entirely by billionaires and corporations, voting record that serves donor interests over constituent interests by a 4-1 margin, not independent, controlled. Final grouping. The understanding you claim, authentic voice who truly grasps working-class struggles, someone whose book and background give him unique insight into Appalachian poverty and forgotten communities. The reality you created, wrote a book blaming poor people for their poverty, made $4 million selling that narrative to coastal elites, built a media career on capitalizing on Appalachian suffering, then used that platform to launch a political career where you voted against helping those communities at every opportunity. not understanding, exploitation. Crockett stands now, gathering all four binders. Every element of your public identity is manufactured, Mr. Vice President. Your name legally changed for branding. Your accent emphasized for political purposes. Your working-class image a costume worn by a millionaire venture capitalist. Your populism a performance funded by billionaires. Your principles abandoned when convenient. Your representation serving donors over constituents. Your authenticity completely insincere. She holds up Hillbilly Elegy one more time. This book is the perfect symbol of your entire career. It claims to be an authentic memoir of working-class struggle. It is actually a Yale graduate's manufactured narrative designed for elite consumption, capitalizing on poverty while blaming victims, building celebrity without helping communities, creating a platform for political power used to serve the wealthy instead of the struggling. You wrote, "The real problem is us," meaning poor people are the problem. But looking at your record, Mr. Vice President, the real problem is people like you. People who exploit working-class struggles for profit and power. People who perform authenticity while serving elite interests. People who claim to represent forgotten communities while voting against their needs at every opportunity. People who manufacture an identity to gain political power, then use that power to serve exactly the billionaires and corporations they claim to fight. Crockett looks directly at Vance, no longer at the documents, but at the person. You interrupted my testimony today to suggest I do not understand working Americans. But I am not the one who blamed them for their poverty. I am not the one funded by their exploiters. I am not the one voting against their health care and wages and worker protections. I am not the one who made millions from their suffering, then abandoned them when they needed help. I am not the one who manufactured an entire identity to gain power while serving completely different interests. You are not authentic. You are manufactured. You are not a populist. You are a facade. You are not a voice of working America. You are a billionaire's puppet in a carefully crafted costume designed to look authentic. She sets down all four binders with finality, and the receipts prove every word of it. The silence that follows is absolute. J.D. Vance sits at the witness table, his confident smirk from an hour ago vanished, replaced by something between stunned shock and barely controlled anger. His entire carefully constructed identity is dismantled by documentation he cannot deny, because it is his own words, his own votes, his own donors, his own book. C-SPAN viewership is at 312,000. Every major news outlet is carrying this live. On Twitter, #HillbillyFraud is trending #1 globally, above everything else in the world. The video of Crockett's systematic deconstruction is already being shared millions of times. Chairman Brown, stunned by what he has witnessed but recognizing history, finally speaks. Does the Vice President wish to respond to Congresswoman Crockett's presentation? Vance opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again, finally managing. This is clearly a coordinated political attack designed to undermine. Coordinated by whom? Crockett interrupts. By your own book? By FEC disclosure forms? By Senate voting records? By your own interviews and statements, Mr. Vice President? I did not attack you. I documented you. I used your own words, your own votes, your own donors, your own published memoir. If your own record undermines you, that is not my fault. That is your character. Vance tries again. My commitment to working Americans is genuine. And your record shows you vote against working Americans 94% of the time, while serving your billionaire donors 94% of the time, Crockett says flatly. That is not commitment. That is betrayal. And calling it genuine does not make it real. Vance, with nothing left, stands from the witness table. I came here in good faith to preside over Senate proceedings, and I'm not going to sit here and be subjected to character assassination based on deliberately distorted. Nothing I presented was distorted, Crockett says, her voice hard. Every document is authentic, every quote is accurate, every vote is recorded, every donation is disclosed. You can verify everything I said. In fact, I encourage everyone watching to do exactly that. Read Hillbilly Elegy, look at his voting record, check his donors, see for yourself. The receipts are public. She pauses. You can leave now, Mr. Vice President. We're finished. That dismissal, calm and final and devastating, is the last word. J.D. Vance walks out of the Senate hearing room, every camera capturing his departure. His manufactured working-class identity is in ruins. His authentic billionaire-funded reality is exposed. His entire political persona is revealed as a calculated misrepresentation. The vice president who came to lecture about authenticity is leaving after being systematically proven to be completely insincere by his own words, his own votes, his own book, his own life story. The receipts he thought nobody would compile into a comprehensive case until someone did. Within 90 minutes, the video is the most watched political content on every platform in America. On Twitter/X, #HillbillyFraudTrends. #1 globally with over 4 million tweets, #FakePopulist, #PuppetVP, and #Venture Capitalist Vance are all trending in the top 10. The full hearing video posted by C-SPAN accumulates 7 million views in 2 hours. Clips of specific sections, the Hillbilly Elegy reading, the donor breakdown, the reversal timeline, the final dismissal, are shared countless times. YouTube multiple channels post the full hearing with titles such as VP Vance dismantled by his own record, Jasmine Crockett exposes the inconsistent authenticity. Watch a manufactured identity collapse in real time. Full hearing reaches 12 million views by day's end. On TikTok, younger users are creating explainer videos about Vance's donor relationships and voting record, many titled How to Spot an Insincere Populist. The demographic that Vance tried to reach with podcasts and social media is now mocking his exposed misrepresentation. Cable news. Every network is leading with the story. CNN brings in campaign finance experts who confirm every donation Crockett cited. MSNBC runs fact checks confirming his reversals on every issue. Even Fox News, desperately trying to defend Vance, cannot refute the documented evidence, his own book, his own votes, his own words. Print media, Washington Post, homepage headline, Vice President's populist image shattered by own record. New York Times, Vance's working-class authenticity questioned after systematic documentation of elite ties. Wall Street Journal, VP's donor relationships raise questions about whom he represents. The response from Appalachia is particularly pointed. Local newspapers in Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia are running editorials titled, "He Never Spoke for Us, the Hillbilly Elegy Misrepresentation Finally Exposed, How J.D. Vance Exploited Our Suffering for Profit and Power." Middletown, Ohio, Vance's hometown, sees protests. Not large, maybe 50 people, but symbolic. Signs reading, "Had hillbilly fraud, sold us out for Silicon Valley, he got rich, we got abandoned." Local news is interviewing longtime residents who say they never felt represented by him. Religious leaders who endorsed Vance as a Christian voice are now releasing careful statements. We are reviewing concerns about the consistency between stated values and actual votes. Christians must hold themselves accountable to authentic representation, not performative populism. The Vance team releases a statement at 6:23 p.m. Vice President Vance is proud of his record fighting for working Americans and will continue advocating for the forgotten communities he comes from. Today's hearing featured a coordinated partisan attack that deliberately misrepresented his background, his book, and his legislative priorities. The vice president's commitment to the values he wrote about in Hillbilly Elegy remains unchanged. The statement is universally mocked because it does not address a single specific allegation, does not refute any documented fact, and just repeats vague phrases about fighting for working Americans when Crockett proved with voting records he does the opposite. Conservative media tries various defenses. This is about class warfare by urban elites against authentic voices, a defense that does not work when the receipts show Vance is an elite. Democrats are threatened by Vance's populist appeal, another argument that fails when his donor list is composed of billionaires. Crockett is just another progressive politician attacking success. a point that misses the mark when the issue is perceived inauthenticity, not success. None of the defenses gain traction because the documentation is too comprehensive. It is not allegations, it is his own words and votes. By evening, polling data starts coming in. Vance's favorability drops 11 points nationally in rapid response polling. More significantly, his approval among white working-class voters, his supposed base, drops 14 points. Among people in Appalachian regions, his approval craters 18 points. Ohio polling shows a disaster. His approval in the state he represented as senator drops from 51% to 38% overnight. In working-class counties that voted heavily for him in 2022, his approval is underwater. Republican strategists panic. Anonymous quotes to reporters, "This is a catastrophic blow to our working-class messaging." If Vance is exposed as a billionaire's puppet, it undermines our entire populist strategy. We cannot have our vice president be the face of inauthentic populism. Democratic offices celebrate but also scramble to capitalize. Within hours, multiple Democratic campaigns cut ads featuring clips from the hearing with text, "He claimed to represent you, his donors control him, his votes prove it." 2 weeks later, the Trump administration tries damage control. Vance is suddenly absent from public events. No rallies, no speeches, no appearances in working-class communities where he was supposed to be the authentic voice. When he does appear, it is at fundraisers with wealthy donors in New York and San Francisco. The irony is lost on no one. Protesters show up outside these events with signs, "Real Appalachian" or "Insincere Populist," and "How much did you pay for him?" Investigative reporters, energized by Crockett's documentation, dig deeper into Vance's financial relationships. ProPublica publishes a detailed analysis of his investment portfolio showing he personally profits from companies that offshore jobs. The Washington Post reveals additional undisclosed benefits from Peter Thiel beyond the $15 million Super PAC donation, speaking fees, book promotion support, venture capital seed funding. The New York Times runs a comprehensive investigation titled "The Making of J.D. Vance: How Silicon Valley Created a Political Persona," documenting in painful detail how Thiel and other tech billionaires essentially manufactured Vance as a political product, from funding Hillbilly Elegy's promotion to providing media connections to bankrolling his campaign. Sales of Hillbilly Elegy spike again, but now people are reading it critically, highlighting the victim-blaming passages Crockett quoted. Book clubs across America are discussing how they were manipulated by a manufactured narrative designed to absolve wealthy people of responsibility for poverty. Appalachian advocacy groups organize a response. They publish Reading Hillbilly Elegy Critically, a community guide that systematically addresses how the book perpetuates harmful stereotypes. The guide goes viral in academic and activist circles. Ohio State University, where Vance got his undergraduate degree, sees student protests demanding the removal of his name from a scholarship fund he established. We do not want to be associated with someone who capitalized on Appalachian poverty for profit while voting against helping those communities. The political damage compounds. 3 Republican senators privately tell colleagues they are concerned about having Vance on the ticket in 2028. 2 major donors reportedly contact Trump's team expressing worry that Vance has become a liability. Most damaging, working-class voters in focus groups express feeling betrayed and used. One Kentucky voter in a focus group, "I thought he was one of us. Turns out he was never one of us. He was using us to get power for rich people." Conservative think tanks that promoted Hillbilly Elegy quietly remove it from recommended reading lists. The American Enterprise Institute takes down Vance's author page. The Heritage Foundation stops citing his book in papers about poverty policy. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett becomes the most prominent Democratic voice on economic justice and working-class issues. The irony is perfect, and everyone sees it. A black woman from urban Dallas is now more trusted to speak about working-class struggles than the white man who wrote Hillbilly Elegy. She is invited to speak at union conventions, labor rallies, and community colleges in Rust Belt states. Her message is consistent. Real representation means real action. Real understanding means real policy. Real authenticity means your record matches your rhetoric. Book publishers engage in a bidding war for her memoir. Working title: Authentic Voices, Exposing Political Insincerity and Fighting for Real Working-Class Power. The deal reportedly reaches high seven figures. 3 months later, Peter Thiel tries to distance himself from Vance, releasing a statement through a spokesperson. Mr. Thiel's investment in Mr. Vance's campaign was based on policy alignment at the time. Mr. Thiel has no ongoing role in Mr. Vance's political activities. The statement is corporate speak for "I am cutting my losses on a failed investment." Other tech billionaires who funded Vance quietly stopped taking his calls. He is toxic now, damaged goods, a failed product that did not deliver the working-class credibility they purchased. Vance tries to rehabilitate his image with a media tour. But every interview becomes about the hearing. Every journalist asks about specific votes Crockett documented. His answers remain vague and defensive, never addressing specifics, always claiming misrepresentation without explaining what was misrepresented. One particularly devastating interview on Meet the Press, where the host simply reads passages from Hillbilly Elegy blaming poor people, then shows voting records where Vance opposed helping them. "Can you explain the disconnect?" Vance stammers about complex policy considerations and multiple factors. It is clear he has no good answer. His approval rating stabilizes, but at dramatically lower levels. He is now underwater nationally, 38% approval, 52% disapproval. Among his supposed base of working-class white voters, he is at 41% to 51%. In Appalachia, he is at 35% to 58%. The Appalachian brand is destroyed. The Republican Party begins serious discussions about replacing him on the 2028 ticket. Unnamed sources tell reporters he is a liability. His working-class authenticity was his only value add, and that is gone. Without it, he is just another politician with a billionaire puppet master. Vance's Senate seat becomes vulnerable. Ohio Democrats recruit a strong challenger, a union leader with actual working-class credentials who is running an explicit contrast campaign, Real Ohio, not inauthentic populism. The Trump administration quietly sidelines Vance. He is no longer sent to rallies in working-class communities. He is kept away from economic policy announcements. His role becomes purely ceremonial, attending state funerals and ribbon cuttings, the traditional vice presidential irrelevance. Hillbilly Elegy becomes a cautionary tale, now taught in sociology and political science courses as an example of manufactured narratives that exploit poverty for elite consumption, and academic papers analyzing how it perpetuates harmful stereotypes proliferated. The production company considers pulling it from the platform but decides against it, adding a content warning about problematic stereotypes and victim-blaming narratives. Vance's name becomes shorthand for inauthentic populism. Political analysts talk about pulling a Vance, claiming working-class authenticity while serving billionaire interests. Activists refer to Vancing, manufacturing an identity for political gain. His name becomes a verb for political misrepresentation. 6 months later, Location 1, San Francisco, California, Peter Thiel's office in downtown San Francisco, glass and steel and views of the bay. J.D. Vance is sitting across from the billionaire who created his political career, discussing what comes next. Both men recognize the investment failed. The product is damaged beyond repair. They are trying to salvage something. The cold and analytical conversation, the authenticity narrative, is unsustainable. The receipts are too comprehensive. You'll need to pivot to explicit elite representation, drop the working-class performance, embrace the venture capital background, position yourself as a business-friendly Republican. Vance understands that his entire persona must be abandoned. The base will not accept that. The base already rejected you. Your approval in Appalachia is 35%. The Appalachian brand is finished. You are toxic to working-class voters now. Your only remaining value is to donors, but even that is compromised because you are seen as a failed investment. The conversation is about salvage, not success. how to extract some utility from a political career that is fundamentally over in its current form. The man who was supposed to be the authentic voice of forgotten America is discussing his future with the Silicon Valley billionaire who controls him. The irony is complete. Location 2, Middletown, Ohio. The town where Vance grew up, where he supposedly maintains a connection to his roots, where Hillbilly Elegy was set, is now openly hostile to their most famous resident. His face is removed from the Middletown Heroes mural. The local library takes Hillbilly Elegy off the recommended reading shelf. At a town hall meeting about economic development, nobody mentions Vance despite him being their senator-turned-VP. When his name comes up, the response is bitter. He got rich telling people we are lazy, then he got powerful and did nothing to help us. He is not one of us. He never was. A young mother is speaking to a reporter. I believed him. I thought he understood our struggles because he wrote about them. Turns out he was just selling our struggles to rich people while doing nothing to actually help. I feel used. The town is a symbol of betrayal, the place where authentic working-class struggle was exploited for profit and political power. The community that Vance claimed to represent but actually abandoned is now rejecting the manufactured identity he tried to sell. Location 3, Washington, D.C., Crockett's office, 4 binders framed on the wall, red, blue, green, and gold. Reminders that comprehensive documentation defeats manufactured authenticity. Jasmine Crockett is in a meeting with labor union leaders, discussing actual policy solutions for working-class Americans. The irony is not lost on anyone that she has become a more effective voice for these communities than the man who wrote a book claiming to represent them. She is planning legislation, stronger union protections, a higher minimum wage, corporate accountability measures, healthcare expansion, policies that actually help working people rather than blame them for their struggles. Her authenticity is enhanced by having exposed political misrepresentation. Her credibility is strengthened by documentation over performance. Her influence is growing because she proved that preparation and receipts defeat manufactured personas. When asked about the Vance hearing, she is succinct. He built a career on inauthentic authenticity. The receipts showed what was real and what was performance. That is not my accomplishment. That is just accountability. The real work is using this moment to actually help the communities he capitalized on. For J.N.'s Givaos E. Fanods. Vice presidential position maintained but influence destroyed. Cannot be the face of working-class outreach. Toxic to the base. Every economic policy speech met with #hillbilly fraud. Approval rating underwater nationally and in Ohio. 2028 ticket replacement virtually certain. Political career functionally over despite holding office. Name became synonym for inauthentic populism. Legacy, the manufactured appellation exposed by his own contradictions. For inauthentic populism, harder for billionaire-funded politicians to cosplay as working class. Increased scrutiny on donor relationships versus populist rhetoric. Vance test becomes standard. Does your policy match your performance? Conservative working-class voters more suspicious of manufactured authenticity. Real credentials matter more than performed identity for authentic working-class advocacy. Crockett becomes a national voice for economic justice. Labor unions experience resurgence in credibility. Policy focus shifting from cultural explanations to systemic solutions. Working communities demanding representatives with actual records of service. Documentation and receipts become standard for accountability. For Hillbilly Elegy, book sales crash as the misrepresentation narrative spreads. Removed from most recommended reading lists. Becomes academic case study in exploitation and harmful narratives. Netflix considers removal, adds content warnings. Title becomes shorthand for manufactured victimization narratives. Hillbilly Elegy effect. Cautionary term for capitalizing on poverty without helping for Peter Thiel and billionaire politics. Increased scrutiny on billionaire purchases of candidates. Campaign finance reform gains momentum. Thieled or Vanced. Terms for a billionaire creating a political puppet. Donor disclosure becomes major campaign issue. voters more aware of who funds populist candidates. You cannot build a career on manufactured authenticity. The performance only works until someone compiles the receipts proving it is performance. You cannot claim to represent people while voting against their interests 94% of the time. The voting record does not lie. You cannot profit from others' suffering, write books blaming them for their poverty, make millions from their pain, then claim to be their voice while doing nothing to help them. You cannot serve billionaire masters while pretending to fight for working people. The donor lists and voting records tell the truth. You cannot reverse every principle you claim to hold based on political convenience and maintain credibility. Calling Trump Hitler, then Lincoln, does not show growth. It shows insincere opportunism. Authenticity requires consistency. Record must match rhetoric. Policy must match performance. Service must match stated values. And when someone prepared enough, thorough enough, and armed with comprehensive receipts shows the gap between manufactured image and documented reality, the facade collapses. Not because the prosecutor destroyed you, but because you were never real to begin with. The prosecutor just revealed the costume, showed the billionaire strings controlling the puppet, documented the exploitation masquerading as representation, proved that the authentic Appalachian was always a venture capitalist in working-class attire. The four binders were red, blue, green, and gold. The receipts were his own words, votes, donors, and book. The exposure was systematic and undeniable. The manufactured identity collapsed completely. And one man who built a career on inauthentic authenticity, who wrote a book blaming poor people for poverty while making millions, who took billionaire money while claiming to fight elites, who reversed every principle for power, who voted against the people he claimed to represent 94% of the time, learned the hardest lesson. Performance only works until someone documents reality. Manufactured authenticity crumbles when receipts meet sunlight. And when a prepared woman refuses to be lectured by an insincerity, refuses to accept manufactured credentials, refuses to let exploitation masquerade as representation, the facade falls apart. The costume comes off. The billionaire's puppet is revealed. And the hillbilly elegy becomes what it always was, a profit-seeking venture exposed.